Anyone want mine?
Okay.
Anyone want mine?
Okay, I have to sit and watch myself the whole time. That's
Make sure you don't fall asleep.
if I fall asleep, I don't see myself. Well, thank you for inviting me here today. It's really not necessary, but probably because of the principle of diversity that Jonathan wants to invite the different people to come and speak, because he could speak instead of all of us. This is his expertise, and because he deals and dwells in the issues, he knows them better than all of us. But for the sake of diversity, I agreed to come, and I can't say no when he asked me to come, being devoted to the subject. And this is, as Jonathan said, something which an issue I've been preoccupied with for several decades, both in the work in the Knesset, in the public sphere of the Knesset, as the head of the caucus, creating the caucus in the Knesset, and legislating. Israel is actually in the legislation one of the best countries in the world. We did, during the 10 years I was in the Knesset, we got to one of the best levels of the countries in the world in legislation. Not all the legislation, unfortunately, is effectuated, is put into, is materialized, but we are on a pretty good level when it comes to legislation. But we have a long way to go to be on the better level of the world when it comes to realization and understanding the importance of environment in our society and the different tribes of our society. And I'm one of those who believe that if we want to change this, that it's very important that we bring in a combination of the ethos and understanding with the identities of our society. The identities are very strong in our societies, as they are today in most societies, and becoming stronger. And when you combine the identities, here also the religious and traditional identities, with the ethos of the necessity of acting for the future of humankind and the good of humankind, then people are more safe to work for issues which they otherwise would not be preoccupied with. And therefore, to base the work of environmentalism in the sources of all the different religious traditions which are here in this country, I think is very crucial for being able to succeed in both in actions and in civil society, in practices of every family, in every group, every ethnical group, every religious group, and for changing the mindsets of people in our country in this crucial matter for the future of our country and our neighbors and our existence. So I want to start with something, and I don't know what's been taught the previous time, so maybe some of it will be repetitions, not all of it, I'm sure.
We focus on solar energy.
Okay, well, I'm going to talk a little bit about our sources, and a little bit about the basis of why we are here, and what the basis of our existence here in this country is, why this country was chosen, the connection between the land, and people, and God, which is also in the title, I think. And go back to the beginning. If we look to the beginning of the story of the Jews, of course we go back to the first Jew, who was Abraham, and see where Abraham comes from a very rich place. He comes from the place which was the paradise, which was Gan Eden, right? He comes from Euphrates, Nahar Prat. Today it's also today it's a rich place. If there wasn't so much war there, we're also trying to help that there will be a little less war there. If I could talk about this, I would give you other lectures of what we're doing to try to help there. But it's a very rich place with rich rivers and wealth and richness. And he was told to leave there and come here to this place. And after he came here, which was the idea was to build an ideal, a model society. He was doing good things on the way. It said that on the way he was, the story is that that's our tradition, that on the way he was teaching the story about one God, he and his wife, Sarah. He was teaching the men, Sarah was teaching the women, and the people were learning from their words of wisdom. But even then, God said to him, Lech lecha, you have to go to this place, which I'll show you, to this land. And he came to this land, but immediately after he came here, there was a famine in this land, and he had to leave, and he went to Mitzrayim. I say Mitzrayim on purpose and not Egypt. Mitzrayim is in Judaism the symbol, and this is also in the word, of something which is tsar, something which is very narrow in many respects, symbolizes a society which is built on an ultimate materialism, also richness, like the place which he came from. It was materialism, it was idol worshipping, built on the richness of the Nile, of the Nile. What do you call it in English? The Nile, the valley of the Nile, which gave the richness to that place. And that is, if you remember your Bible history, that's one of the reasons why all the experts in Egypt could not figure out the dreams of Pharaoh. You remember when Pharaoh had the dream of the 7 fat cows and the 7 lean cows, and the other dream which he had, I'm not going to go into the details of the dream, they couldn't figure it out. Why couldn't they figure it out? Because they had never had such a thing as 7 years of famine in the land of Mitzrayim. There was no such thing. There was always richness. There was also always plenty there. That was the substance of Mitzrayim. They didn't know such a thing. While Yosef, who came from here, Here we know that every day we look towards the weather and we see, let's have a little rain. We know what it is to have years of less rain and years of more rain, and we need this and we need we know what it means to have years of famine. So for Yosef, this was, with God's help, of course, a much more easy thing to interpret that dream, which all the experts of Mitzrayim could not interpret. But Yosef came from here, so this was where Abraham came from, and then he came back, and he had a lot of wealth with him, and the Torah says that he looked at the land. And he had his only family he had was a nephew called Lot, and they couldn't agree because they had too much. They couldn't agree on sharing the land because they had too much wealth. That's what the Torah says. Our commentators go more into depth with this, and they say that their disagreement was about the divine promises. Lot, his nephew, said, well, God's promised you all this land. The whole land will be yours, so let's take the whole thing. You know, what do you call it in English? A mikdama.
Advance payment.
What?
Advance payment.
Advance payment. We'll take an advance payment. God's promised you everything, so we can take everything. And those who were working with Abraham, they know that you don't take something which is not yours. You might have divine promises. This is a discussion which we still have going. You might have divine promises for all kinds of things, but you don't take what is not yours. This is something we're still discussing with the land here today. Some people say that we can take everything, and others say, no, you take what's yours and not what's not yours. But I'm not going into...
How do you define what's yours in those times or now?
Well, that's a good question, which I'm willing to give another lecture about. But in any case, that was they couldn't manage. And then Abraham comes to his nephew and he says, you can choose what you want. If you go to the right, I'll go to the left. If you go to the left, I'll go to the right. Take which part of this you want, but we can't be together. We have two totally different world visions. We can't go together. And what does Lot then choose? Says the Torah that he chooses what has the greatest richness, the valley of Jordan, the Jordan Valley with Sodom and Amorah. This is what he chooses. It was before the destruction of Sodom and Amorah. And why does he choose that? Says the Torah, because it's Kegan Hashem Ke'eretz Mitzrayim. It's like what he came from, the richness of what he came from. It's like Gan Hashem, it's like where they came from, the Garden of Eden, right? From what he saw, the richness which he came from in the east, and Ke'eretz Mitzrayim, the richness of the Nile in the west. That was what he had seen. That was what he came from. The ultimate richness of this world. That's what he saw in Sodom and Amorah. But it was also one other thing. It was also the ultimate evil. It was also society which was built on a class society, a society of the haves and have-nots, a society built on idol worshipping, but idol worshipping in worshipping wealth and worshipping like the ultimate person who was worshipped was the Pharaoh in Egypt. He made himself God. He said, it says in Sefer Yechezkel, in the book of Yechezkel, he said, and about the Nile, he said, Ani asitini, I have created the Nile. I'm the one who have created the Nile. Okay? There's all kinds of more or less funny midrashim that when he had to pee, he did this always in times when nobody saw him because they couldn't see that a god has to pee. So he has to. He made himself the god. He was the ultimate god. When a pharaoh died, he had to die and be buried in a pyramid with gold and silver and everything, because that was the symbol of the godness of Mitzrayim. It was the ultimate wealth. It was the class society. So somebody else could not come into that class society. So even when Yosef became the prime minister, number 2 in the hierarchy, he could not, if you remember the story of Yosef, he could not eat bread with the Mitzrim. He had to have his own separate table. Why? Because the Mitzrim, they were always in a higher class than him, even though he was the prime minister. But he was a lower class because he was not a Mitzri. So everything was the elite, was the wealth elite, which was built up on the whole society because of the worship of wealth, which comes from that society. Now, this is as opposite of what Avraham Avinu. Avraham Avinu then symbolizes the opposite. Lot was drawn to that wealth. Lot went after that wealth, which was Sodom and Amorah. Okay? That is the society of Sodom and Amorah. It is like Mitzrayim. It's like Mitzrayim in its material wealth, and that's why Sodom and Amorah was destroyed. It could not continue to exist. We have a Mishnah. Which says that there are 4 qualities. The 4 qualities in a human being. There is a quality which says what is mine is yours, and what is yours is yours. There are people who are like that. They say what's mine is yours, and what's yours is yours. These are the real good people. Right? That's the tzaddiks, of the real good people. And then there's those who say what is mine, and what's yours is mine. Those are the bad people. And then there are those who say what is mine is yours, and what's yours is mine. Those are the confused people. And then you have those who say what is mine, and what's yours is yours. Now, there are 2 opinions about those people. One opinion says that they are like mediocre people. Mediocre, in the words of the Mishnah, is a very negative, loaded word. The other opinion says they're like the people of Sodom. Why are they like the people of Sodom, which is even worse than those who say that's the bad people, that everything is mine? Why is that even worse? Because these are people who don't care. What is mine, what's yours is yours. This is the philosophy of the absolute evil in this world. People don't care. What's mine, mine, what's yours, yours. This was the philosophy of, I don't know, Hitler. Hitler says, what's mine is mine. What goes on in Germany, it's mine. You can't be involved. You take care of what goes on in your world. I'll take care of what goes on in my world. Don't care. What goes on in Gaza, it's our business. What goes on in Israel is your business. The whole world is, we don't care about what goes on in other places. This is much more destructive for the world than those who want to grab everything. Those who want to grab everything, we know how to deal with the evil. We know how to grab everything. Those who don't care about anything, that's much more dangerous. That's Sodom. They don't care about anything. They just say, oh, everybody minds their own business. We don't care about it. That's Midat Sodom. That's Midat Sodom. So, this is so this balance we have from what it was in the Halprat and what was in Mitzrayim. Now, Bnei Israel, they come to Mitzrayim. This is difficult to understand. Mitzrayim is Egypt, right? Mitzrayim is, I'm using the whole time the word Mitzrayim, it's Egypt. But the Israelites come to Mitzrayim. If I use a word which you don't understand, stop me. They come to Mitzrayim, and then the battery is running low here. It's still 15% there, but it's running low. Maybe if I speak slow or something.
Your energy is charging the battery.
Well, I'm not sure. Okay. Then, this is a very surprising thing that usually you have the first you have the promises. The first Jew, he makes a deal with God and a covenant. And God says to him, doesn't promise him, only great things. But he says, your descendants will be slaves, will be in a land which is not theirs, and they will have difficulties and tortured and so on for 400 years. And only then will they come out, and then they will come to the land which I promised you. Now, we have to understand this process. This is a process which we need to go through in order to educate the people, to process. First of all, it was not their time to come into the land yet, because the people who were living there at that time, their sins were not at that time, so that they had ended their period in that time. That's not one story. But we have to understand what was the purpose and how the Torah processes us also in relation to understanding what the relationship between them and the land should be. And I want to give you just a few examples of this. And again, keeping in mind what I already said. The Torah says in Sefer Dvarim, in the Deuteronomy, how you choose these words in English? Deuteronomy chapter 11, verse 10. This is a very, very, very important verse about the choice of this land. Why was this land chosen? Torah says, הארץ אשר תבא שמה לרשתה, לא כארץ מצרים היא אשר יצאתם משם, אשר תזרע את זרעך, והשקית ברגלך כגן הירק. It says, the land into which you go to possess it. It's preparing the people to go into the land. This is already after 40 years in wilderness, where they lived in a reality of miracles. Now they were supposed to start to prepare themselves into coming into a land where there are no more miracles, right? No more divine intervention in everyday life. The land into which you go to possess is not like the land of Mitzrayim, from where you come out. There, when you sow your seeds and you watered it with your foot, like a garden of vegetables, right? Automatically, when you were sowing seeds, automatically there was water. It was easy when you were in Mitzrayim. But the land into which you possess it, it's a land of hills and valleys, and drinks water of the rain of heaven. It doesn't come from the Nile, which you're used to. It's the land which the Lord your God cares for. The eyes of the Lord your God are always upon it, from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. What does that mean? It means it's the land where you don't have automatic water, you don't have any automatic wealth. It's a land which you will have to really pray for water. Like when we get up in the morning here in Israel, we want to know how much water is there in the Kinneret, in the Sea of Galilee. Right? We want to know how much water is there. How are we according to the red line and the black? Now it's down to the black line, and we're really lacking. Every Israeli, this is how we tick here. We want to know. We want to pray. The most solemn prayer we have in the year is when we open the Aron HaKodesh, the Torah for Shmini Atzeret, and we say a prayer for rain, Tfilat HaGeshem, and we take according to that. This is where we need God's mercy. So it's something which defines us. This is why this land is chosen, is because it's not like Eretz Mitzrayim. This is how this is why the land is chosen. It's not like Gan Hashem, it's not like Mitzrayim. This is the land where you need to keep your eyes towards heaven. You need to pray to God. But it also has consequences for the kind of society which you want to create in this land. It's not a society which is built on idol worshipping and built on worshipping materialism. It's a different kind of society than what was in Nahal Prat and what was in Mitzrayim. this is the kind of land which you want. So this is one very, very important source, the only source which explains us why this land was chosen. Now, there are a couple of other sources which I need to share with you, which it tells us the same idea. It says in the book of Leviticus 25, verse 34, it says, Achuzat olam hu lachem, that this land should be, what's Achuzat?
Eternal possession.
Eternal possession for you. Now, I want to give you the explanation of Rashal Hirsch, because it's a very beautiful explanation, what he says to this pasuk. He says the following. מפני שניתן לכם לדורות עולם, אין שום דור רשאי לשנותו כרצונו. Because it's given to eternal possession, no generation can come and change it according to their will. אין דור ההווה שליט יחיד עליו, אלא גם דורות העתיד שווים לו בזכויותיהם. This generation is not the sole, has not any sole authorization or dominance over the land, because the future generations have equal rights to the land. It's given for all eternity. וכמו שקיבלו מקודמיכם, just like we have got the land from former generations from before us, כך יניחו אותם להם אחריהם. In the same way, we need to preserve the land for those who come after us. This is exactly the same language which a German Jewish, very important Jewish Orthodox interpreter and thinker wrote in the end of the 19th century, at the time when nobody really thought that this land was going to be in our hands, which is exactly the same language which was used in the UNESCO declaration in 1997. You can take practically word for word and see how it's exactly the same language which was used from this word, which is of course very much like the story which maybe you've heard or maybe not heard of Chonia Ma'agel, that how, but this can be told another time. But I don't want to tell the story. But the concept is that when we come into the land, that the preservation of the land is in our responsibility. And here I want to give you another source, which I think again, we go back to the idea that we left the two centers, right? We left Euphrates, we left Mitzrayim in order to come here, and in order to teach us how to preserve the land here, so that we wouldn't fall in order to create the society here, and in order to preserve land here, in order to preserve water here, and in order to worship God here. And to worship God is the way also to create a right society here. And the next source I want to bring to you, also here I have a translation. I photocopied here. I was afraid we were going to do this in English. All right, this translation here. Yeah. This is from Deuteronomy chapter 20, verse 19. Also, when you come into the land and you have a battle, when you besiege a city a long time in making war against it to take it, you shall not destroy its trees by forcing an axe against them, for you may cut the in order to cut them, for you may not cut them down. For is the tree of the field a man that it be besieged by you? Only the trees that you know are not for food can you destroy and cut down and make matzor, what's that?
Siege works.
Siege works with the city that makes war with you. So this is the verse in Dvarim, very, very often quoted. I want to give you two explanations, two interpretations, very, very classical, very important interpretation of this verse. It's again a preparation. We're talking about the people who have come from Mitzrayim, from the kind of society which we described before, the ultimate society of materialism, of idol worshipping, where Pharaoh was the ultimate idol himself, and they're being prepared how to deal with land, with the place they are coming to, and how, when they're going in and they're going to be battles, how to treat the environment they're coming to. So first we have an interpretation of Sefer Chinuch. Sefer Chinuch is one of the very early interpretations, which writes the different mitzvot we have in the different rules which we have, which we're obligated to follow. So he says the following: Nimneu melichrot ha'ilanot shenatzur al ir. It's not permitted to cut down the trees when we're besieging a town. כדי להצר לאנשי העיר ולהכאיב ליבותם. Because that will make the people who are in the town very sad. That's the reason why we're not allowed to do it. על זה נאמר לא תשחית את עצה ואותו לא תכרות. That's the reason why it says in the Torah, do not cut down the trees. וכמו כן נכנס תחת זה עליו שלא לעשות שום הפסד כגון לשרוף או לקרוע בגד או לשבור כלי לבטלה וכל העניינים אלו וכל כיוצא שיהיה גם השחתה. אמרו ז"ל תמיד בגמרא והוא כעבר משום בל תשחית. From this rule we learn the principle in the Talmud, which is a mitzvah, which is a law of בל תשחית, which means anything. We're not allowed to destroy anything at all. Not clothing, not any utensil, anything. We are not allowed to throw anything away. You're not, we learn from this verse that everything has to be preserved. Everything which can be used and which you're throwing away, you're transgressing a mitzvah from the Torah, which is bal tashchit. You can't destroy anything at all. We learned it from this verse. Shoresh ha-mitzvah yadua, shehu kedei lelamed nafshenu le'ehov hatov והתועלת הוא לדבק בו ומתוך כך תדבק בנו הטובה ונרחיק מכל דבר השחתה. The reason and the source for this mitzvah is known. It's in order to teach our souls to love the good and to connect to Him, to God, who is the source of all good, and to further ourselves from anything which has to do with destruction. And this is the way Hasidim, he's not talking about the Hasidim of today, but people who are doing the good in this world, they love peace and they're happy with the good of other people. This is the way you bring people closer to the Torah. You will not lose even a mustard seed in this world. ואם יוכלו להציל, יצידו כל דבר מהשחית בכל כוחם, and you will do anything in your power to save everything in this world. לא כן הרשעים אחיהם של מזיקים, שמחים בהשחתת עולם. This is not the wicked people of this world. They are happy when things are destroyed, and they destroy things themselves. And okay. So these are very strong words, and this is halakha. This is Jewish law. It's not just an interpretation. This is Jewish law, based on the Gemara and Jewish law. Now, so how does he explain the law of the Torah? What is the reason why we don't, according to this explanation, why we don't destroy things? What is the reason?
It's just a better person. We should try to reach a higher standard of value when we approach other people.
Right. It's in order to make us a better person, and also, he says something which is very important, not to make also other people sad. Right? Not even the people who are our enemies. Right? Not to make them sad. They're our enemies. We're in battle, but don't do something which is not. This is not absolutely necessary in the battle, so you don't do that.
It's part of the warfare to break down the enemy's will. So when you cut down the trees, you're actually achieving that goal, and then it's easier to conquer. So at that point, it makes you not fair. You're not fighting in value.
Right, but you're not allowed to do that. So that kind of warfare, you're not allowed to fight. You can't make that. It's a higher standard of warfare, which you fight. Now, there's another explanation which I think is even deeper than this. Is an interpretation which has halachic, has implement. You need to imply this for everything you do. It means that you can't. This is every issue of recycling and how we deal with today. We produce everything, so it can't last more than 2-3 years, and you have to throw it out. And this is part of the problem of our world today. And there is another explanation which I think is even more interesting. It's an interpretation of Rabbi Yaakov Tzvi from Kellenberg. It's an interpretation. It's called the Ktaben Kabbalah. He lived in the end of the 18th century and beginning of 19th century. He says the following: Tama isu she'en ra'ui l'shamesh bedavar min hanivraim אלא ההפך המכוון ממנו בבריאה. The reason for that you're not allowed to cut down the trees is that you can't do something with what is created, which is the opposite of the purpose for which it was created. Okay? דוגמת אומרם, כי חרבך הנפת עליה ותחלליה. It says right after the 10 Commandments, that you can't take a sword and use a sword when you make an offering on the altar in the tabernacle. You can't take a sword. Why can't you do that? Why can't you do that? It says the following: Hamizbeach nivra leharich yamav shel adam. The altar in the tabernacle is there in order to do good to people, in order to prolong people's lives, to good to people. And habarzel, the iron, the sword, nivra lekatzer yamav shel adam. The sword comes to destroy people's lives. You can't take what was created to shorten people's lives and connect that with what was used to prolong people's lives. Ken etz, same way the tree. המכוון בבריאתו לעשות פירות למאכל בני אדם להחיותם. It was created in order to make fruit for people, also in order that they should live. אין לעשות בו דבר המשחית את האדם ומאבדו. You can't use that in order to destroy people, to make war and destroy people. So what do we see here? How does he give the reason for this prohibition in the Torah of not cutting down the trees? I would say that it's as if he says that everything that is created, not only human beings, like the first reason was that everything is created for the purpose of human beings. Right? So for doing good for human beings, in order to make us better people, we should protect environment. He goes here, I think, a step further than that. He says environment has its own purpose in creation. Environment has its own existence. Trees, iron, trees have it's true that part of the trees and purpose in creation is to make people, to give fruit to people so that they can live. But they have their own existence. They have their own purpose in existence. And you can't take that purpose of existence and use it for destruction. Everything has a purpose in existence, and therefore you don't misuse the purpose of existence. And I think that we know today even more about the purpose of existence of everything. We know much more in the physics and in biology and so on of how things are, how the balance of creation is and purpose of existence, and how you can destroy the balance of existence of human beings, of cells of human beings, the molecules of human beings, and so on. And how what happens when you destroy the balances, and how things are destroyed when you don't treat things, and then things come out of balances, and you have the CO2 particles and so, and how easily you can destroy this balance. And there are many other examples. There was an example in what we read this past Shabbat in the Torah. Am I also already over my time?
So maybe like a few more. Yeah, we would like to wrap up in about 5 minutes.
Okay,
it's gonna be
so I'll give one more. I'll just give one more example. It's also an example which I don't know if anybody else has noticed it. I talked about it, I think, once when Jonathan was around, but I think I mentioned it once in a shiur when you were around. It talks about when we come into the land, and it's quite surprising. Also, when we come into the land, it's talking about before the sin of the meraglim, of the spies. They were supposed to go in immediately to the land, and the Torah says that God will that God will do this in a miraculous way. He will send an angel before you, and he will take care of you. Everything will be miraculous. Everything will be done in a miraculous way, and he will cut off the people of the land, and he will bless you with bread and water, and take care that there will be no sickness, and everything will be fine. You know, the angel will take care of everything. And then suddenly, it says something which is quite surprising. And again, I'm very surprised that I haven't seen this noted in any other text. It says, I will send hornets. What hornets is in English? Does anybody understand what it is? Yeah? Okay. I'll send hornets before you, which will drive out the Chivi and the Knani and the Chitzi from before you. But I will not drive them out before you in 1 year. Because then the land will become desolate, and wild beasts will multiply against you. This will be a process, little by little. I will drive them out before you. And then until you be increased, and then you can inherit the land. This is a quite surprising thing. Why not? If you can do miracles like that, you send a prophet in, and you can do miracles, and he'll take care of all. There'll be no sicknesses, and you'll get all the water you need, and all the bread you need, and everything will live. Send in hornets, and why can't you take care of that everything will happen and immediately? Why not? Because you can't deal with the land like that. The land doesn't work like that. The land needs to process. If you do things in one time with the land, that doesn't work. There you can't play tricks with the land. You need to be educated that it can't be done in one time, because then the land will become desolate, and there'll be wild beasts, and you need to learn that you can't deal with the land in this way. The land needs to be processed. The land needs to be dealt with in its own, it has its own speed, it has its own nature, and you need to deal with it decently, like we do also in the laws of Shemitah and so on, which I don't have time to go into. So again, just to wrap up, the whole process, which started with Abraham Avinu, that he had to leave where he was doing good things, and he could have stayed. He could have spread in the whole world. He could have spread the good words, and he could have spread ideal society in the whole world. That wasn't the purpose. The purpose was that he was to come here, and he was to learn from where he had come, and where he went to also to Mitzrayim, And the same way the people had to come to Mitzrayim, his descendants had to come to Mitzrayim, to learn what not to be, right? To learn that not to be like Sodom and Amorah, to care, to be involved, not to have a class society, to care about the land, to be in a society where you need to care about each other and where you need to be dependent on God and on each other in order to create a just society. And where you need to care about the environment, and where you need to treat the environment properly and to treat each other properly, otherwise you cannot be in this land anymore. And we have no promises. We have a promise that there will not be a flood again all over the world and to destroy the world, but we have no promises that the world will not be destroyed by environmental catastrophes or other catastrophes. That is in our hands because we are supposed to care. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi Melchior. Appreciate the teaching. If I could just ask one question in relation to what you just said, but there's a lot of religious adherents who say that God will save us and that it's part of the divine plan that we, what's happening on the planet and the degradation. What do you say to that view?
They're not reading any of what it says. The whole Torah says that God speaks to us. We say it every day we say it every day when we read Shema. We say that God speaks to us through rain. If you behave properly, you'll get rain. If you don't behave properly, you won't get rain. So if it was predestined, what does that mean? God says in the Torah that if we have a society which is immoral, then we will be cut off from the land. And this happened. I mean, with all the good intentions, when we came into the land, if you read the story of what happened. Just read the second chapter in the book of Judges. You see already it couldn't work. In spite of all the good intent, you see already that Moshe Rabbeinu, he already knew that that the people were not going to live up with all the good preparations and all the good intentions. They were not going to be able to do this. And we still don't know if we're able to do this. So those who say that it doesn't matter what we do, everything is the divine plan and so on, they're not reading anything from what the Torah says to us. And this is very difficult. We are here now. I'm saying this also on the level not only of the connection to environment, but to corruption and to the kind of society, ideal society we want to create. These are not easy days. We again have another prime minister who's now this. We have prime minister and a president and a chief rabbi and the whole. And you know that these are only the few things which are found out by the police. You know that systems here are not functioning and things are very difficult. And therefore, it's good to know that there are many people who care and want to create a better society. But they have to act. And it's not for sure that things are going to be good here. We have got another chance here to make a just society. That's what we're here for. Otherwise, why do we need a Jewish state? Well, there are enough states around here.
There's a connection between the environment and the judgmental, the Hashiva Shoftenu Karishona, the way the system works and all the corruption, it's actually the same issue. If we don't care about the land, we're not caring about our friends or society.
Yeah, well, you didn't. I spoke about this like the first half hour. So I said this was the principle of Sodom. The principle of Sodom was that there was a richness and a working towards materialism and a class society and corruption and not caring about each other, which also meant that that you can destroy the environment because you just take and grab and want to possess more and more, and then you don't care. There's nothing left for the environment. You forget that it's instead of lo tachmod, it's tachmod. You just greediness becomes the sole principle of society, wanting more and more and more. Well, how much can people want? But but there is a deep connection, and therefore we need also an approach which comes from the source of your identity. Again, here I'm talking about the religious identity, the traditional identity. That's why it's so important that it just doesn't only come from just doing good, but it's not strong enough in our society. It's very important that it comes also from a point of view of the different identities. People just say, oh, it's just something doing good. We have a problem that we haven't got a Mishnah Torah. Jews have been, you can't just take, there are lots and lots of sources in the Talmud and in this which talk about environment, but they're not giving you rules about what to do today in the environment, because they necessarily could not do that. They're not giving rules in many other issues, which are modern issues. They can give you the principles, they can't give you the rules. And we need to translate those principles into rules today of our society. And because we're a society of rules, we're not a society only of just saying do good. We need to have some principles which translate those doing good into active principles. What do we do? How do you do? How do you limit? What do you do with your litter? What do you do with your... So we have rules of bal tashchit, of not destroying anything. So how do we translate that into legislation? This is what we did in the Knesset. I believe, again, we came very far. But then how does the government effectuate that? If you don't punish the factories, if you don't, then it doesn't help anything. You can have a very good legislation that the polluter pays, but if you don't go out and control which companies do all the pollution, then it doesn't help anything that you have the legislation.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Rabbi Melchior. Really blessed with your teachings, and we thank you for sharing. If anyone has other questions, maybe you go up to him after.
Right. Yeah.